Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to the Irish takeover of the Man United agenda. If trading profit and loss account, balance sheet, and trading losses float your boat, boy, have we got the show for you. Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to the Man United agenda. My name is Rebel, and I'm joined today by United. Stefan, you're very welcome.
Yep. Thanks very much for having me over as always, man. Looking forward to it. Got plenty to go through tonight. Some of it can be quite eyebrow raising, but looking forward to it.
Absolutely. As I said in the opening statement, if you're absolutely loving financial accounting, this is the show for you because boy, have we got quite a bit to go through. Because yesterday, Manchester United went on a madness and didn't file one, didn't file two, but they filed one, two, three, four, five SEC documents, totaling somewhere in the region of, I think, about 200 pages between the lot of them. And interestingly, I thought I noticed that there was a notification of an EGM in February. Did that come across your desk at all?
Yeah, I've seen something about that as well, Rebel. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out on. Obviously, we would be kind of coming into that kind of period towards the new tax year and stuff. So that kind of stuff would be expected at some point. But I think last year the AGM might have been kind of like June, July time. I think was kind of when the takeover stuff was really hitting up. Obviously, I think everyone read really into the AGM and nothing came of it to nobody's surprise either. But I think I did see something about the EGM in February, so something definitely keep an eye out on.
Absolutely no. It could be in connection with that tender offer that was filed to the SEC. But before we get into the meat and bones of financial accounting, there's a few people we need to say hello to. Stephanie is saying big up to Rebel and Stefan, aka the United Philosophy. Like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell to both channels. We do appreciate you reminding people to do that. It is very much appreciated. Big T, he's saying it comes out that the Glazers gave the fake sheik a deal that would make them sell to them pending proof of funds, and the fake sheik did not accept. Possibly a case of daddy won't sign the checks. Uh, we will definitely speculate over some of that because that is on the menu today. Matty Bass is saying, good evening, everybody. And then, of course, the Quizmaster, the 7'5" green giant of the United agenda, OMONDI Juma saying, greetings to us all. And who else have we got in here? Jesus, the comments are flying. DK Wilson, good evening to you. Big T's loving the Irish takeover. So if you want us to launch a coup d'etat, get Paddy Lawless on, and we'll definitely take over quicker than United got taken over. No, that's for sure. Bart, our troll that we've loaned to Stefan. Good evening to you, sir. Hope you're well. And I will be interested to see some of Bart's comments because he is very in tune actually with the business side of things and can be quite insightful when he decides to go with the topic. And We Deserve Better is also in the chat, so he's saying hello. Now, Stefan, dealer's choice, because we can start with a bit of speculation or we can go right into financial accounting. What are you feeling?
Ooh, it's a good one. Joe, let's go into some speculation, and I think that kind of leads on nicely into the actual nitty gritty of the details that are legitimate, I guess. We'll go with the speculation to start with, Rebel.
Very good. Now, he was mentioned yesterday, and that is one Anthony Martial. And since yesterday's show, his agent has come out and responds to the claims of Ten Hag banishment, and it raises eyebrows. So the agent now is getting involved. In this matter. What is he saying here now to us? He's saying, as a report in the Daily Mail, they've claimed that Martial is not fit enough to work with the first team group at present, given the intensity and work rate the manager demands from his players in training. While this is standard practice, Manchester United's claimed the length of time it is taking Martial to gain fitness has raised eyebrows. Now, Talk Sport, obviously known for their quality journalism and reporting, had Gabby Agbonlahor dip their toe into this, saying it's possible because Martial doesn't want to leave. Maybe a chance to leave has been offered and he hasn't. So Ten Hag now has banished him, akin to the Jadon Sancho situation. Now, Martial's agent, Philippe Lomboli, has labelled these reports as completely false, as the attacker has been absent from first team training as he has been injured and has no problem with Eric Ten Hag. What has been said is completely false. He told Sky Sports he is not excluded from the group and has no problem with the coach. So, unlike Sancho and his agent, he has come out fighting and swinging, saying this is complete and utter bollocks, and he wants to distance himself from the matter. Any thoughts?
You know, it's one of these ones, Rebel. It's like we've been told for weeks upon weeks that this guy's ill, that he's had a virus, that he's not been able to train, he can't be around the group, we don't want to risk exposure. And I guess when you look at the amount of players, we've had out with illness in the last couple of weeks and months, you would say, yeah, look, that's probably a smart enough idea if he's genuinely ill. But I think when it started to get to like 3 or 4 weeks of genuine illness and being absent from every squad and from the training, you're like, okay, there's definitely something more at risk and more going on here than meets the eye. And I think this might just be a continuation of it. Look, I think it's interesting because I don't think Ten Hag has really come out at any point during his United tenure and said that a player is injured when they're not injured, that they're ill when they're not ill. I think he's always had a decent level of transparency on that. So I'm not too sure how I feel about this because this entire like minor surgery for his abductors, this is going to come out of nowhere as well. I mean, it is Anthony Martial we're talking about as well, but I don't know. I think you're looking at a player that maybe the club would love to move on. Like I'm positive they would because he's one of the top earners in the club. I think he's one of the top 10 earners at this point. So, you're kind of looking at it. He's top 10 earner. He's never in the squad. There's always question marks over his fitness. Nothing about his ability, but it's just what we get out of him. So I think the club would want to move him on if possible as well. So there might be a little bit of a little hint of truth in what Talksport might have been saying, but I think that's kind of just stating the obvious as well, without really looking between the lines. But yeah, look, I think it's just something to keep an eye on, and I think the timing of it is interesting as well. So I think it's a story that's going to develop across the next couple of weeks. I think it's not the last time you'll be talking about Anthony Martial leaving Manchester United.
Actually, interestingly, given the fact that he is out of contract this summer, what we would be saving by getting rid at this stage would be somewhere in the region of probably 4 to 6 million. Now,
Yeah.
given that we've had players refuse to leave without having their contracts paid, the transfer value that we probably get for him at this juncture would probably just barely suffice to pay off his contract.
Yeah, I couldn't see us getting more than £4 or £5 million at the very best. I think he might be more sellable if he could genuinely stay fit, but I think that's always been a massive issue as well with the guy. And look, it's not the first time we've been in this situation with him. There was the Sevilla loan that was just a complete disaster as well. So I think other clubs will take a view of it. Like, is this really a player we want to spend money on, who we're going to have to pay big wages, who probably is going to be available for 25% of the matches at best, maybe? So I think they'll take that view. I think we'd love to sell him if we could, but I don't think we're going to be able to. It just looks like another player is going to run out of contract and leave for nothing.
Yeah, very interesting. Now, as a segue now to our next story, which is regarding a centre back, there was rumours yesterday that Marcus Rashford is a target for Bayern Munich. Now, this one kind of came out of the blue for me, and my feeling is that there's not much substance behind the claims from this particular article. But Bayern Munich is an interesting destination because they are going to be losing players in the position that Marcus plays in due to out of contract. I think it's Sané is out of contract come the
Mm.
summer this time round. Now, we've seen the ridiculous rumors of being linked with Vinicius Junior, who has issues with Spanish media and some of the narratives that has taken place in Spain. If, and again, this is pie in the sky, you could achieve £70 million from Bayern Munich and basically turn around, hand that to Real Madrid, who are rumored to want to fund a move for Kylian Mbappe, and another 30 on top of it for Vinicius Junior. Are you taking that as a quality trade up?
Do you know, it's one of these things, Rebel. It's I know that Marcus Rashford is a very frustrating player. Believe me, I think we've all seen the best and worst of him at times this season. I think there is definitely an element to truth that a lot of people who might want to move him on, say for like a Vinicius or for Rafael Leao or a Kvaratskhelia, maybe they're not watching these players all the time because a lot of them aren't quite getting the goals and assists and that maybe their name and reputation gets. It's if you watch a player maybe once every 2 weeks and he has a real good match, you'll think, oh, this guy must be something, but he might not do too much in between those 2 weeks. I think, yeah, Rashford's been an issue this season. I think the big contract, those really big wages are definitely going to be something that's going to come across Radcliffe's desk at some point because we seem to have an approach taken to all of the top earners, our Casemiro's, our Varane's, Martial's, Sancho's. We want to do something about that. So I think you could see movement on that. I would be surprised if Bayern Munich was the destination because the only place I've really seen credible links to is PSG, perhaps. But I mean, stranger things have happened. They have signed Harry Kane from Tottenham. Maybe it is something they would be interested in. I think Vinicius is a really good player. And yeah, look, I think if he came to United, you definitely would be excited about it. But I think it's just one of those we're just kind of have to wait and see. I do think it all kind of lends hand in hand when we see Rashford not performing well, people talking about him leaving, and then they're like, okay, who can we go and make a link to between um, them and Manchester United? What's going to sell? What's going to sell papers? What's going to get the clicks as well? So it's one of those ones here. We could turn around and sign Matoma from Brighton, but Vinicius is just a bigger name to get the clicks and stuff as well. So might be an element of that in it, but definitely one to keep an eye on, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it is interesting. And Big T, to answer your question, this stereo right here behind me, at the moment, there's AC/DC, Highway to Hell, Metallica, Load, and Ride the Lightning. And I think And Justice for All is in there as well at the moment. And then there's a kind of a mix CD that I put a load of Rage Against the Machine and a few other bits and pieces in on there. So now you know. And, let me know in the chat what would be in your 5 CD deck interchanger. Name those 5 albums, and we might have a look at them at the end of the show, and then maybe even get Stefan to reveal his 5 CDs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. I'll have to think of one in the back of my head once we go on.
But yeah, back to foosball, as they say, and it is regarding Bayern Munchen. Actually, no, I'm going to pause that one for a second. I'm going to go back to Sergio Reguilon. Manchester United obviously terminated his loan, and we found out today that he has now joined another Premier League club, and that is Brentford. Good move for him?
Yeah, I think he'll play. I think Brentford have struggled for a left back most of the season since Rico Henry got that injury. So I think he'll get minutes there, and I think they'll play to his strengths as well. I think Regulon was a pretty determined player, pretty passionate, but maybe not quite got the on-ball quality. But I mean, Brentford's going to have more space to hit. They're going to have more ability to counter attack, and that's going to help his overall game as well. And I think like with Ivan Tony coming back, maybe there can be some assists and stuff there as well for him if he can pick Tony out with some cutbacks or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a good move for him, and obviously just wish him all the best as well. So
Question for you as well in the background from Big T. Explain the tartan.
the
He's
tartan.
obviously he's looking
Oh,
at his.
it's just a blanket, honestly.
I think he was probably thinking that you might have had some Scottish roots. And Bart,
No, no, no.
as you know, that is the colours of a certain movement that we won't draw into the conversation tonight.
Yeah, it's Norwich City. Big
Uh,
big fan of Timmy Pukki over here, obviously.
Actually, would you believe there's a girl I used to work with, and she used to babysit a young Adam Ida, Norwich striker. Believe it or not, so there is some linkages to Norwich for you and some
There
useless
we go.
information. And Solo, as always, a big up to you, sir. He's obviously the alumnus of the channel and the one that pulled us all together. So good to see you in the chat. But let's circle back to Munich and then briefly on to United's squad depth after. But a certain player from Nice, a centre back that we've been linked with, like ducks are linked to water since we lost Kim Min Jae to Bayern Munich, and that is Nice, owned by, of course, soon to be minority stakeholder Sir Jim Radcliffe. Bayern Munich are looking, for some bizarre reason, to poach yet another centre back and are looking to gazump Manchester United and bring him to Germany. Now, this is an interesting one, isn't it, Stefan? Because they signed a young Dutchman not too long ago, someone that we fancied, a young Delish. And it seems that they obviously are looking to move away from him due to his fitness concerns. Would you be concerned that Manchester United could roll the dice on yet another injury-plagued player, again, regardless of his quality, at the expense of pulling in someone that obviously Nice have done their homework on?
Joe, honestly, Rebel, if it was a season ago, yes. I think if it was Richard Arnold running the show with John Murda and Eric Ten Hag was just getting whoever he asked for, whatever player he singled out, then absolutely this was a sort of deal we could have done. I'm surprised there wasn't more movement on it as well, to be honest. At certain points, I really, really am. I don't think it's the kind of deal we'll go for now. I think in Delit, you had a player, I think he really stood out when he was a teenager in that Ajax team. Obviously, I think he was maybe 19 or 20 captaining them in Champions League semi-finals and stuff, and he really stood out. He got his big move, and then ultimately he ended up going to Bayern Munich. Hasn't really worked out for him there with fitness and stuff. So I think it's the exact opposite kind of move we need to make, because I think in Varane, you have a really good defender. He can stay fit. So there's no point really bringing in another player to come in to take Varane's place, who also can't stay fit. So I think there's more chance of us signing Tabeto. Obviously, if we don't sign him, I think questions would be asked there as well. What's going on with that potential signing? But I think there is other centre backs who seem to be being linked to as well. Some of them worth keeping an eye on. There's Lenny Yoro, Jared Brantwaite, and obviously Tabeto's still there as well. So there does seem to be options, and I think centre back looks to be an area we're going to have quite a bit of investment in the summer. I think you could see Maguire and Varane go and two centre backs come in, for instance. So I would definitely keep an eye out for some of that there. I think you might be muted there, Rebel, or it might be me not listening.
Oh, that is my
Was it?
bad.
I was wondering if my audio would cut out there.
So I'll circle back on what I said. I said, speaking of centre backs, Manchester United announced today a very happy birthday to our very own butcher, Leitcha, and he is celebrating his birthday today. And hopefully, we'll be seeing him return to the pitch quite shortly. Bart is asking us, should Manchester United go for Taribo instead of Jared or Antonio Silva or Hinsepi or Tapsoba?
It's a pretty good question. That I think Brantwaite, I've been a big fan of this season. I think he's looking really good for Everton. I think Tipsoba's been good for Bayer Leverkusen. I think he's maybe been playing more as kind of like a central centre back and like a back three as well. So questions about whether the adjustment back over to a back four system would suit him too well. But I mean, Antonio Silva, we know his quality. I think the big worry there is paying £100 million for a defender. I think that's the concern with that one. But I like to bid it, but I've always kind of had the opinion that if you spent a little bit more, you maybe could get a higher level player or a player with more of an upside as well. Not that he's a bad player, he is a good, really good player. But I think for a little bit more, you probably could do a wee bit better.
Absolutely. Now, to wrap up the speculation, obviously we've seen today, Palestri looks like he's heading for Granada. Ahmed is apparently on the loan block. You were telling me before the show started that Dangor could be loaned out. Just let's focus on those left and right wing positions at the moment. Given Sancho's gone, given that Palestri's on the way out, given that we're likely to loan Ahmed on the wing, bear in mind that Martial is more than likely going to spend 3/4 of what's left not available to us. If anything happens to Anthony or Garnacho or Rashford, we're in big, big trouble.
It was kind of looking like that, Rebel. I think we're looking at four wide players for the two positions. So I guess you would probably put Rashford, Garnacho on the left, Ahmad, and Anthony as your options on the right. Now, obviously, look, Garnacho can play on the right as well. We've seen that in the last couple of weeks, and it's been pretty effective at times. But it's not a lot of depth, to be honest. I don't think you've got the form from Anthony either. So I would wonder if then, based on form, would Ahmad be given a real, proper run at it as well? If we're being honest with ourselves, because I think Pellistri got that run earlier in the season, he didn't really make the most of it. So I wonder if Ahmad might get some matches coming up. Look, we're playing what, Newport County. I think we play Wolves, West Ham in the next three. So those are matches you could maybe put Ahmad on, see how he does. So I think it'd be an interesting one to keep an eye out on for sure.
Indeed, indeed. And it's definitely something that we need to kind of watch, I suppose, in regards to our squad depth, because if we decimate it to the point where it's impossible to have a functional squad, regardless of what people think of Eric Ten Hag as to whether he's the guy or isn't the guy, you're pretty much selling him out by not giving him at least a full squad to operate from.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. I think those injury concerns have been there all season as well, Rebel. I think we've seen maybe it's kind of quieting down a little bit, but definitely in and around the Christmas period, there was a lot of talk online that we were being overtrained by the management and that they really were working us too hard. And I think they were kind of comparing it between Manchester City, obviously, where they might have lesser training weeks. If they've got three matches, it might be some light recovery work and then more like actual tactical and film study and stuff, where we seem to be doing the hard running every single time. So I don't know how that's going to factor in, but I think Ten Hag's got to manage his squad. I think the good thing is, I guess in that sense, is that there's no European football, so I think that'll help for sure. Like and thankfully no Thursday nights away to away in Kazakhstan or away to Iceland, thankfully. So we're not going to have that kind of distraction as well. So I mean, if we can keep people fit and build up some form, don't know what could happen between now and the rest of the season. Maybe I'm being too optimistic there, but
Well,
I'll leave it at that.
speaking of optimism, Solo is very optimistic about everyone here on the channel and has sent us a super chat for £5. So that's me and you off to get a hot coffee in the central supermarket because it is absolutely bleeding Baltic here in Ireland at the moment. I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
sure what it's like over there where you are in the UK, but we are not liking this -3, -4, -5 malarkey that they're pushing onto our shores at the moment. So thanks very much for that, Solo. Just going to hit one or two more comments before we get into financial accounting 101. Bart is saying, when you sign a winger for United, what are the qualities you look for? Is it output, versatility, age, ability to perform under pressure? Um, Maybe that's one that we can circle back to on a later show. I might have back time with Vaughan do an in-depth analysis of what is a Manchester United inside forward, for want of a better word at this stage. I'm not sure if they're true wingers anymore. in the Premier League. DK Wilson is saying, this began with the preseason in the US period. Thank the Glazers for their unabashed okie dokie. And Solo's telling us it's only the -5 in London at the moment. Mr. B, um, you might be interested there in Bart's comment about wingers. Maybe you want to delve into that tomorrow. Up to yourselves. So it is time to get into the main event. You might have noticed on our graphic for the show today, there was a very sad looking businessman with an arrow pointing downwards and all that money about to be flushed down the Swanee. Now, Manchester United Football Club announced losses in the Q1 accounts yesterday. But before we get into that, I'm just going to bring up a little graphic regards to the cost of the takeover. So it is being reported that Manchester United have paid the Rain Group the princely sum of $31.5 million to facilitate this partial acquisition by Sir Jim Radcliffe. Now, this is in addition, I think, to the 500 lawyers, exaggeration, that were appointed by the Glazers to operate the negotiations throughout the period. And I think the cost for them came to another 60 odd million. So, in essence, 100 million roughly in outlay for a 12-month farcical takeover exchange. But notwithstanding that cost, in one of the reports yesterday filed to the SEC, it was revealed that initially Sir Jim Ratcliffe had an offer for 60%, that is the full Glazier holdings of Manchester United Football Club, sit there. It wasn't gaining any traction, and he did a couple of revisions. But the deal, as we know it now, is apparently been sitting there since July of last summer. So Manchester United Football Club could have accepted that deal and done that partial share and regrouped, allowing therefore, if not for the summer window, the full impact of the takeover being able to be brought to bear in this January window. But for reasons that will probably never be known to us here in the United fan base, it didn't happen. What do you think was the logic of sitting on this for so long? Because if it is true that it wasn't there in July.
Well, I think it's very interesting that Rebel. Now, look, this might not be the most public stuff, but I had seen other channels kind of speculating. And I think whenever you look at everything kind of with hindsight, one person left the ship very early. They jumped before they were person. That was the then CEO, Richard Arnold. And there was always kind of question marks over Richard Arnold's overall approach in that takeover as well. You know, when we were talking about it, certainly on my own channel, and we always knew that he would be one to go. So, was there internal intrigue? Was there people holding the deal up, hoping that maybe if the Qataris got their bid together and got it in, then maybe their jobs would be saved? I'm not too sure on that one, but I've always kind of had that suspicion that there was definitely factors within the club, maybe not even with the Glazer family as well. I think maybe within the executive that they were looking after their own backs as much as they were for the club. And I mean, it is a kind of position only we could find ourselves in. Just to circle back to some of the information you were giving out at the start, only we could lose money selling ourselves. Like that is a special achievement, if we want to put it out there. So I think there's definitely factors within the club working against it at times and just looking after their own interests. And I think that maybe is why this bid sat there from July pretty much until October. You know, we were talking a good few months of the year, and really it could have been done. It probably wouldn't have made much of an impact for summer, but we could have had the new executive in. We could have had a whole plan done. We could have had our CEOs, directors, football, all that could be done. We could be looking at this window as an investment opportunity, or looking at summer with maybe 4, 5, 6 months where we could have a clean run of summer, but now we're finding ourselves in a spot where we might have 3 months at best to plan out the first window of a massive rebuild of the entire club as well. So it's definitely cost us.
Absolutely. And Big T, I was just looking at it there, it's 56 lawyers, 5, 6 was involved in this transaction. And I know there's a lot of legal paperwork. I know there's a need for a dedicated team to go off and perform the duties of offer consideration and transfer of ownership, as is any standard contract. But obviously, it's magnified by being one of the biggest sports clubs in the world. But 56 seems just ludicrously overproportioned. Now, there were some speculators out there that there was not an arm's length contract between the Glazer family and some of these lawyers, because obviously it was not coming out of their pocket. I'm not going to touch on that today, but I let that marinate there out in the chat, that maybe there was a few jobs to the boys, because we have seen that in the past with some ex-players. For better or for worse, they were brought into Manchester United Football Club. We've seen other channels point the finger of blame at Alex Ferguson, and that he knew what he was getting into bed with when he arbitrated the discontent over a horse, and that he had no option but to put his feet in with the Glazer family. Again, that is the views of other channels. But what I do want to come at too is, in the detailed SEC filings, it was reported that Sir Jim Radcliffe threatened to walk away from the entire process. Now, this was speculated in the media at the time, on Christmas Day, due to the levels of, I suppose, unnecessary delay that was being put forward, because the offer was there. There was no changes to the offer per se. Now, there was talk about sporting control and some of the Glazier siblings wanting just to be completely out, and the way that that offer would materialize in the breakdown of how they would kind of impart away from their shares. But it obviously was a case that, were the Glazers thinking that there was still a chance that they could get that cash bonanza that they always dreamed of? Or was there a regret, maybe even, that they didn't take that 60% offer at whatever it was, $30 or $28 a share, and be done and dusted with Manchester United Football Club?
I really, honestly, Rebel, I think these are details we're never going to find the full story to. I think these are, we'll get little tidbits across months, maybe even a couple of years at this point. Obviously, look, not everything can come out. A lot of NDAs signed, a lot of um a lot of contracts were signed, basically, that a lot of the details couldn't come out. I'm positive that some of the Glazer family wanted to go. I think that was always the case, and it was so widely reported on for so long that you would say that has to be the case. That it was only really Joel and Avram very keen to stay on. Look, I think whatever way you look at it, they bought the club with a leveraged buyout. They saddled us with debt, and they're walking away with a lot of money right now. And when Radcliffe eventually will try to buy them out, they're going to walk away with a lot more. So whatever way you put it, they have done very well out of this at our expense. But I think Radcliffe's always. I think I've just seen in the comments there as well, and I think it's coming in from Stephanie as well. She was just saying there, originally the Glazers were looking Radcliffe to bump up the price of the Qatar, but it looked like it was the other way around. There was definitely aspects to that, and there did seem to be a real sense from some people reporting on it that the Glazer family were kind of blown away by Radcliffe, in the sense that this was like a proper businessman. He wasn't falling for the tricks, and he would just go back time and time again because he really wanted it. So I think I think some of them probably wish they could have took the money. I think they're probably going to be happy now, because if Radcliffe wins, and sorry, not if Radcliffe wins, but if he succeeds, makes this club profitable, we win on the pitch, there's record revenues coming in. They're going to make more money in the future than what they would have done taking a potential 60% buyout last season as well. So they're going to walk away with a lot more money out of this. Still, I think they've got something like 700 million at the minute, so they're going to be doing very well for a very long time at the expense of our enjoyment of our football club, probably. But
Very true, yeah. Just want to touch on something from Bart. Why would Joel and Avram dispense with their shares? I suppose let's just talk about it from a pure accounts perspective. So you got your fixed assets, your stadium, Carrington. At the moment, they are severely depreciated by lack of infrastructural maintenance, by lack of enhancement, by lack of basically looking after your asset. So you're looking at a money pit, a black hole there that might get sorted temporarily at 100, 200 million, but probably down the road is going to need somewhere in the region of 6, 7, 800 million to bring up to code. You're looking at a training ground that we've been listening to get criticised under various managers since Jose Mourinho. That it's not up to snuff, that it's dated, that it's in the past, that again is going to need a lot of money. Now I know we announced recently the facilities for the youth and the women's teams, but that is only one part of that area. Then you're looking at your kind of your current assets, your playing stock. Are any of them worth anywhere near the asset price? Absolutely not. There's a few obviously that are punching above their weight, but again, there's a loss on your net book asset. And then you're calling into your current liabilities. And I was going to touch on this a bit later, but let's start with the 700 odd million of fixed debt that's been there that we've failed to make an impact on since Malcolm Glazer purchased Manchester United Football Club way back in the early 2000s. But the more concerning one, the revolving credit, known to us normal mere mortals probably as a credit card, has seen 100 million added to it in the last fiscal year. So I think the report at this stage is we're somewhere in the $1.1 billion range in terms of debt that is owing. So the question of why would they dispense with the club is that it's pretty much at a point where it's going to go from getting you money to being a money pit. And that seesaw is edging closer and closer to being pushing away from the Glacier family. So I don't know if you want to come in on that, Stefan.
yeah, look, absolutely, I agree with what you were saying there, Rebel. I think one of the best was I seen the entire financial situation of this club over the last 10 years or so explained was pretty much that the Glazer family had no choice but to sell because their ownership model does not work anymore. This is not a cash cow at the minute because the cow is dead at this point. It what were once assets have turned to liabilities. We are paying um a lot of money just to get the facilities back up to scratch, and ultimately they were never going to put the money into um turn things around. That was just never going to happen, and we tried a lot of things to try and make it look better on paper than what it was. We know that Ed Woodward had the brilliant idea of taking a player's contract in terms of the length of it and multiplying that by their weekly wage and saying, oh, Marcus Rashford is a 70 million pound asset to the club. His contract's worth this amount for this long, so that looks better on a balance sheet, I guess. But I think we're just at the point now where over a decade of horrific financial mismanagement is just finally caught up to us. And I think you're seeing it reflected in the numbers. Um, I think when you're talking making record revenues for a quarter one, but still making a loss of 25, 26 million pounds, that's a massive concern. That loss is going to grow across the rest of this year as well, because obviously, look, we're not in the Champions League anymore. The sponsorship is some of that is contingent upon that. So we're going to see a drop in revenue in that sense as well. You got a training facility that Ronaldo said there was still the same cracks in the swimming pool as what there was when he first left the club in 2008. Managers have been bashing the place. As we know, Old Trafford is in desperate need of either a complete refurbishment or a completely new stadium. That's the level it's got to at this point. We can't just put a lick of paint on it and to say look how brilliant this is at this point. So it's just came to, it's like you said, if it's a seesaw, it's got to that point now where it's just tilted and it's not going to go back without some upward momentum coming into it, some investment coming into it. Glazer family were never going to do it. It was always going to have to be Radcliffe. 200, 300 million, it's a lot of money. It's probably not going to scratch the surface of what this club needs overall. And I think that it's going to be a big job for Radcliffe to get this done. And look, Ineos could feasibly put £1 billion into this club in terms of a stadium, training facilities, and a squad, and still just about be where we need to be. And I think that's just another reflection on how we've been run for the last 10, 15 years, maybe even longer as well. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think the only positive we can say is that the more Radcliffe does invest, seemingly the more shares and control he's going to get. So that might be a positive long term. So that's kind of it. But these financials, they're not good. And when you see Ineos and briefs coming out from their side about talking about downsizing, overstaffed departments, looking at cuts and stuff to really try to streamline the processes we're going through, I'm not surprised they're having to do that there as well. This club needs to be profitable. We've been making losses for too long, so I'm sure we are flirting with the edges of getting into trouble with it. So definitely a lot of work to be done from Ineos on this one. And yeah, I mean, I really don't envy them either. Like,
Absolutely, you were quite correct. We did report a 25.8 million Q1 loss in the accounts. Now, before we touch on a few bits and pieces, there is two other topics I wanted to cover with you on the SEC filings, and that was that Sir Sheikh Jazim's credentials were driven into disrepute during the filings, and that he did not provide proof of funding for his acquisitional proposal, and that his first offer was at $25 a share. Then it bumped up to $30 a share in May, and allegedly Rain informed the Qatari group that they would consider 35.25 per share for a complete and utter takeover of Manchester United Football Club. And in October, we know that he withdrew his offer. Now, this has been disputed in the media, and he's claiming that these reports are false and that they are, I suppose, negligently damaging his character. Now, without speculating on that, given the wealth of the Qatari nation, if the report of 35.25 million per share is true, I think that came out at somewhere in the region of 4.5 to 5 billion pounds. Now, it's been claimed in the media since this farcical takeover situation began that he was offering close to 6 billion. Is this kind of an element of gamesmanship? Because, as we know, the SEC is a severely regulated authority, and false reports read to them are not some sort of fire that you want to be playing with, because not only will you get burnt, you'll probably lose a limb.
yeah, I mean, absolutely, I completely agree with that as well, Rebel. These are guys you cannot lie to. You cannot be. There's no spin on it. It's not PR. It's the genuine cold hard truth of what went down, what was offered, and ultimately, whilst the Qataris did put a lot of promises out there, and there's a lot of things that we wanted to hear, it does look like all of that was put out there in a way to win popular support amongst the fan base, amongst um, the people who really wanted to see the Glazers gone. And look, what they were offering on paper was exactly what everybody wanted. It was full takeover, no Glazers, no debt, new stadium, billions for players, everything you could possibly want at this club, everything you could possibly want for any football club. And it's one of those things, it seemed too good to be true. and ultimately it was just too good to be true. If they can't provide proof of funding, you would question where the money was ever going to come from. You would question how much of an impact the Credit Suisse collapse had on Sheikh Yassim's personal fortunes. I think there might have been an expectation on his side that there might have been other investment from within Qatar, possibly from his family as well, that never really seemed to materialize. And even in interviews, his father seemed very uninterested in the actual concept of buying the club as well. He very much seemed to just pass it off as it could be Sheikh Yassim's bid, it could be his ownership if he gets it. And look, ultimately, the party with the proper bid, he did everything by the letter, and he had proof of funding. They ended up winning it, and I don't think that can be really a surprise when we look back on it. Look, I think hindsight's a good thing to look back on this. There was times when Bloomberg, even Reuters, the big financial institutions, were getting it wrong on this one. So it's good to have the cold hard facts, and I think now we can just move on with it. I think Radcliffe was clearly the only serious bidder with everything we have now. So at least that's done, and at least he will eventually be running the show at United. Might have took a lot longer than we wanted, but I mean we're going to get there.
It's like Ian Rodair, and we'll get you there, or Ryanair. They'll get you there, right? But it might be an airport 100 miles away from your destination. But the last kind of thing before we kind of go into some of the figures is there's a major windfall for United current executives and ex executives from the disposal of shares. Now, I think the majority of them do hold Class A shares. So that is your general share that is available on your stock market. And Woodward, Arnold, Stewart, Cliff Beatty, and there's a few other names mentioned, are all set to profit from the disposal of their shares. Now, why is it, you reckon, that they would have preference in disposing their shares over any other ordinary Class A shareholder to make the profit from this undertaking of purchase of shares? Why wasn't it more open market?
It's a good question that as well, Rebel. I think what we want is to get these guys and the influence that they have had at the club, just get rid of it. Really, I think, I think it's just another shadow. It's another mark against this ownership and the way these guys have been running the show. I think we all knew it, and we all kind of suspected it the entire time that this very much was um, the boys' club making money on this as well. They were always going to make money on it. Even Ed Woodward, who resigned and left the board a couple of years ago, he's still making money on it. So this is it's just another deal sweetener for those guys. And yeah, look, I think you could have seen it gone more open market, but it's it's one of those things. It's never the takeover process was never really conducted in a way that was going to be anything but beneficial to the Glazer family and to the people running the show as well. The game was pretty much rigged from the start. So they're going to walk away with a lot of money from it. But at least they're walking away and they're not going to have any involvement at the club anymore. That's maybe the silver lining on all this.
Absolutely. So, um, there was mention of potential lawsuits when the offering for Class A and Class B shares wasn't harmonised, but I won't go into that. So let's touch on a few of the kind of eyebrow raising elements of the accounts. So before I get into the commercial income, despite the fact that big earners like Ronaldo and a few of them left Manchester United Football Club, Manchester United's wage bill rose by 90.3 million, despite no De Gea, no Ronaldo, no Fred, no Dean Henderson, all quite well played players, and whose replacements came in at a lower offering. So how is it that Manchester United Football Club managed, obviously new contracts are a factor with Rashford, managed to not only not go to the level that they were previously, but they've shot beyond it?
Again, it's financial mismanagement. It's very much the inmates running the asylum here at Manchester United. I think you would genuinely struggle to run a club in a worse manner and have it at a worse financial position than this. It would really make you question what is going on. How are these guys even in these lines of jobs? And I think something that will be interesting is to watch where these guys go next. Because if I see a top club coming looking Richard Arnold or John Murda or uh, anyone of that ilk, even a Woodward, I would genuinely be gobsmacked. Like I just don't know how these guys manage to get into those positions that they have done. The rising wage bill is a big concern. Obviously, that's going to be something Ineos are going to have to take a look at, and that directly impacts pretty much everything at this club. It means we struggle to sell players on. They don't have to take pay cuts. This feeds into everything because we got a bloated squad with players who we can't move on. I think that's why we didn't see Maguire leave last year. I think that's why no one's gone in for Anthony Martial. It's why no one's probably going to go in for Jadon Sancho unless he takes a big pay cut as well, because these guys are under a contract. It's guaranteed money. They don't have to take a pay cut. They can sit here, turn up for training, and fulfill their end of their contract and just sit it out, even if they're not fancied. We've seen this at other clubs. You've seen it at Real Madrid. Gareth Bale was the same. He turned up, went to training, did everything he was contractually obligated to. So we could find ourselves stuck with a lot of these players, but it's just chronic mismanagement compounded over a very long time, and you're just seeing the fruits of those processes really paying out at this moment in time. And it might be one of those things. It might get worse before it gets better as well. I think that could be a potential um, future outlook on those finances.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to touch on the commercial incomes, obviously our sponsorships. Now, obviously, TeamViewer, who are on that jersey there behind me, are departing. Now, I think we're after getting somewhere similar, even a bit more than what TeamViewer were offering from Snapdragon or Qualcomm, whichever you prefer to call them. But the fact that Manchester United Football Club, commercially speaking, is not generating a steady increase in commercial incomes is rather concerning. Now, this doesn't take into account the likes of your Champions League money and your TV money that's kind of steady. Even though I do believe that we have a drop in cut in TV money due to, I suppose, not being kind of top billing in terms of the prime time shows of football. But Manchester United traditionally would have gotten the pick of the energy drink suppliers, the pick of your food nutrition suppliers, and all the people that are paying for billboards around the ground, etc. But is this the business world saying to Manchester United Football Club, you award the Mount Everest, now you're not even K2, you're Caron Tool in Ireland?
I mean, it really could be Rebel. Look, this club has been a commercial powerhouse for a very long time. In that time, we've managed to really fall off a cliff in terms of success on the pitch. That was always going to feed into it eventually. It really was going to come back to hit us at some point. We were regularly finishing outside the top four. We were still able to pull off £200 million summer transfer windows. That's not possible anymore. I think you're seeing a lot of negative a lot of negative financial reports here. I mean, the operating expenses for the quarter 184 million, an increase of 21 million from the quarter before that. I think you're looking at rising debt. Obviously, the global interest rates haven't helped us either. I'm positive. So some of it is going to be the global financial situation that we find ourselves in with rising interest rates. Obviously, spending is down. You could see recessions and stuff, but I think we are where we are for a reason, and that's because we haven't been successful on the pitch for a long time. We have been missing out on Champions League regularly. and the additional money that comes with that. Obviously, finishing lower down the league is going to fit in to what we're doing. I think Adidas at one point had a contractual obligation that the money they would give us would drop as well should we fail to qualify in the Champions League. So I think all these things are kind of coming into play at the same kind of time, and obviously at the same time we've stagnated on and off the pitch, and it's just such a shame because on one hand you're like, yeah, look, this team needs a lot of money, we need a lot of a lot of players brought in, and then the other hand you're like, these financials are so bad, we're going to be limited in what we can even do in the first place. So it's not looking good, if we want to put it that way.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. Now, Zoe, I do see your comment, and we will touch on that in our wrap up. I think it was Big T also mentioned it earlier on, so we will be finishing with that particular question. But as we spoke about previously, Manchester United Football Club are currently subject to FFP breach under the Profit and Sustainability rules and regulations. Now, this particular loss does not help that situation because each Premier League club can have a PSR calculation that is pre-tax losses over a 3-year period, with deductions made for spending on youth development, women's football, and community, etc. United post pre-tax losses of £32.8 million in the first quarter of 2023-24, which follows a combined pre-tax loss of £182 million over the last 2 campaigns, bringing you to a total of £215 million. Even with significant deductions to be made to that figure, United may face a challenge to bring their losses below a maximum of £105 million that is allowed under these rules over a 3-year period. Now, bear in mind, Everton Football Club received a gargantuan 10-point deduction for breach of the PSR, and they're now getting a second bite under those rules because obviously it continued to breach in subsequent financial periods. So if Manchester United doesn't come under the 105 million breach, there may be some concerns for Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Now, the commission of the $300 million doesn't seem to. The $300 million does appear to fit the league's criteria required to cover such losses. So obviously, this $300 million wasn't a figure that they brought in lightly. There was some pre-context to it, and coincidentally, and I don't know how you feel about this, but you, as a minority shareholder, coming in, paying for your right to own that chunk, you then, on top of that, then are coming in and taking responsibility for the mess that your predecessors left you. There was an opportunity for the owners as they stood to make such investments over the course of time that we would never hit the ire of profit and sustainability. It kind of leads to Zoe's question, but it does suggest an imbalance, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, absolutely, absolutely. It would. It really does come back to bite us time and time again. Look, I think we're one of the very few clubs out there that has never had any actual investment of capital come in from our ownership. I think that's always managed to be part of the reason why we're struggling with FFP. Look, other clubs, if they do make a loss, their owners can invest some money into it. And I think Radcliffe's this investment, the additional 300 million across the rest of the year. I think I've got it broke down here. I think it's coming in the form of 200 million and then 100 million. I think that's what the initial statement did make. But yeah, look, I think that's going to make a difference. I'm glad to see that will obviously help us in terms of those profit sustainability rules. That's obviously a big positive because otherwise, I don't know where this money's going to come from within the club because we can't really sell the players. we can't rely on the Glazers to bring money in. We have massive liabilities for the stadium and the training facilities. So the money's not in the club. So it was always going to have to come in from external investment, from outside of the club's coffers, so to speak. So I think that's why the takeover itself was always inevitable. It's good to see that Radcliffe's investment will make a difference in that sense, and it's just embarrassing to be in this situation, though. It it really is, Rebel. It's like if you were, I think they call it like a co-op mortgage. If you're paying half the house, the bank pay half the house. It could be like the bank turning around and asking you for a loan for this month's mortgage payment for their end. It's kind of embarrassing that the majority owners still are not putting money in. It's a minority guy floating the club and keeping it running, so to speak, and out of legal trouble. So I would be very worried about that. I think if there ever came a day where Radcliffe was unwilling to continually pump lots of money into this club to keep it sustainable, then we might be in a lot of trouble as well in that sense, with Everton's FFP, because I don't know what a 10-point deduction would do to our season right now. Maybe we'd be bottom half, close to the
Yeah,
relegation zone, closer than we want to say, maybe. um,
yeah,
so so I think we got to avoid that under all circumstances. So hopefully this money coming in is going to make a difference, keeping us afloat, helping to fund this initial rebuild. I don't want to see that credit facility going up again. We're buying players with the credit card. We're paying for them on Klarna, if you will, um, by putting the payments out over such a long period of time, awardizing the deals and stuff. So all these bad decisions are coming back to hit us at the same time. So thankfully, the takeover's done. Thankfully, Radcliffe's managed to come in, and hopefully, this money's going to make something of a difference.
absolutely. Now, I suppose just circling back to the kind of last bit on this deep dive into all these revelations that came through the SEC filings, and it does kind of touch back on Big T and Zoe's question with regards to reports on early kind of forced sales. But Sir Jim Ratcliffe, he's 71 years of age. He's a businessman that obviously has interest in the football club. But let's just go doomsday scenario here. Taking into account that there's a report that he allegedly can buy all of Glazer's sales shares within an 18-month period, or sorry, after an 18-month period, or if it's not completed by a 3-year period, I believe, he can be forced to sell his stakeholding at a defined share price. But if that gentleman does, for some reason, live to see out the phases of this intricate business deal, do you believe there's sufficient interest from Ineos Group to continue with what is clearly an endeavour that is spearheaded by Sir Jim Ratcliffe? Because it was reported during the process that Ineos weren't really all that psyched up for wanting to take part of Manchester United Football Club. And how concerned would you be of a clause of an enforced Glazer rebuy?
It's I think it's one of these things that maybe looks worse or scary when we look at it initially. I think I don't think Radcliffe would have went to all of the trouble and paid all of this money if he wasn't intent on doing the deal. And he wasn't intent in following the entire way through, because from a business point of view, to spend as much money as what he has had to do and put an extra $300 million in on top of all that for 25% of Manchester United, which probably, if we're talking in terms of the actual stock value, is maybe 2.5 billion, 3 billion, maybe around about that kind of figure. It's a bad business deal. If we're looking at it purely from a business point of view, there's obviously a lot of passion from his end on it. Now, doomsday scenario, I think then you're kind of saying what goes on here. I think Ineos are an interesting company. Like, for as big as they are and as much money as they actually make, they're still a private company. There's only 3 shareholders. It's Radcliffe and 2 others. So it depends on what their approach would be to it, but I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of contingency plan, worst case scenario. Um, I don't know. Jim eats the chicken at Old Trafford, gets food poisoning, kind of story here. So, I think there will be some kind of contingency plan in place. You would like to think that. On the same hand, if in 18 months' time the Glazer family are looking to move the rest of their shares on, as these um, reports would suggest, and Radcliffe does not come up with the money, then you would question how fit the ownership ever was going to be at that point, if the intention was going to be there for a full takeover. I think when you look at how long he left the 60% offer on the table, I think that's a good sign of that he was very much intending to do this. I'm positive he wanted or would have wanted at some point more than his 25%. Now it's grown to 28%, obviously, but he would have wanted a lot more of it as well. From some of the stories we've seen around Radcliffe coming out in the last couple of weeks, he doesn't like red tape. He doesn't like decisions being held up. If he's in a position to make those calls, then he wants to do it as quickly as possible. And that's why Ineos has always been a private company, so that they can act quickly and with his best interests at heart. So I guess we'll find out what happens further down the line there. I think, look, it's in the Glazer family's best interest for this entire takeover to work out. It's in Radcliffe's best interest for it to work out, and it's in our best interest to work out. And I think that's where we're going to have to take the lead from on this point of view. If it works out for Radcliffe, things get profitable, and there's success back at the club, the fans are going to be really on side with him. He's probably going to be really enthused to buy up more shares. And on the same hand, if it's profitable, successful, the Glazers are going to look at it and say, "Look, this is worth more money to us now," and they're going to be happy with that as well. So I don't expect them to stand in his way in that sense.
Absolutely. Now, my phone has been buzzing like crazy, and I do have some breaking news that will concern Bart more than us. Mohamed Salah is believed to have suffered a hamstring injury during his AFCON game this evening. So that could be a period on the sidelines for Mohamed Salah. Now, does that mean he comes home early and gets a chance to recuperate? But that will definitely be one to keep an eye on if you're interested in fantasy football or indeed a Liverpool fan. Join us in the chat. Um, Zoe's saying, personally, it feels like Sir Jim didn't want to fail a second time at purchasing a Premier League club, and therefore he made the decision to settle for 25% with obviously the opportunity to possibly gain all control by a defined period. So that will definitely be interesting to see. Just want to circle back to Big T. He's the only one that kind of came back with these 5 artists. He's saying Rage Against the Machine, Machine Head, Fear Factory, Cradle Filth, and Mushroom Head. So very much on the rock metal side of life. Um, just want to say hello to Jeff, who's joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Very good to see you again, sir. Hope the refereeing career is going well for you. There's 20 of you in the chat. Please do like, share, subscribe, and continue to give us your comments on your thoughts on the filings from the Q1 financial accounts and the SEC filings on tender offer by Sir Jim Radcliffe to assume 25% control of Manchester United Football Club. And I think in that documentation that had the breakdown, the 300 million, it rises somewhere in the 28, 29% by the time they filter those back into shares or something along that line. DN Vlogs, again, we do want to thank you for your work on the intro. Fair play to you, buddy. But I'm going to give some homework to Mr. OMONDI Juma and Mr. BATHTIME with Vaughan. They're very much the defensive students. And it is concerning a player that you actually mentioned to me before this show began. And the story is just after populating on the releases. And that is Odalian Custod Uno. I probably absolutely butchered the living daylights out of that. But he plays for Xavi Alonso's Bayern Leverkusen. So on Monday, if you're still watching, or Bathtub, if you're with your rubber ducky in the bath, there's the man now that you need to do some homework on and give us a full dossier and report either tomorrow or next week. But the one thing I did find interesting about it is 23 years of age. So we are stepping away from that north of 25 transfer target. Is that a positive view that we're looking at people in their early to mid 20s, just before their prime?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Rebel. Look, I've been saying for a long time on my own channel that we are in a position now where we're probably not an overly attractive proposition to players in those prime years. If you think your prime is maybe 27, 28, 29, and then you're into your 30s, and obviously within the footballing world, 30 is like the end. It's the end of the world. Once you hit that point, you're finished, you're washed, you're you need to move on and think about retirement. But look, seriously, I think we do have a problem now where we can't bring people in that kind of age bracket. So what I think we need to do is either start young and buy players with a big upside potential who you would say they're going to get better as the rebuild goes on, or you bring in players at the other end of their career who might be 31, 32, and they might start at a higher level, but they're only going to go down. And I think we've been picking the short-term options for a long time. You look at Casemiro or Varane, Ericsson, Cavani, Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic. I could go on. There's been a lot of them um, in in the last 10 years or so as well. So I think in that sense, I think bang young players who look like they're going to go on and do something is probably the smarter approach. Now, I know some people would be concerned. They've looked at Chelsea saying, look, they've signed a lot of players 19, 20, 21, and it's not quite gone to plan for them. But I think even if they are 22, 23, then you're looking at players more experienced. They know what they're doing on the pitch, and they're maybe ready to make that big move from a Bayer Leverkusen, from um, teams across Europe as well, in that kind of bracket as well. You'll be looking, ideally, I don't want to see us run to Benfica, Ajax, Dortmund, because that's £100 million for any player. But I mean, if we're running to Leverkusen, I know they're doing really well this year as well. But there's clubs you would look at buying players from. Hopefully, Nice could be one there. Maybe we can get some decent deals lined up there, and you would imagine that with the ownership changes. But I think it's the right approach for sure, man.
Absolutely. And it has been quite an in depth show. We have covered a lot of
It has.
ground, a lot of speculation, and a lot of heavy hitting Manchester United, I suppose, word fluff in the form of SEC filings. Um, I do know that the boys will be back in town tomorrow. That is Mr. B, OMONDI Juma, Bat Time with Vaughn, and various guests to discuss the upcoming. Actually, there is no upcoming Premier League game this weekend. The upcoming FA Cup games, probably, and the usual array of Friday night shenanigans on the Friday night takeaway. Now, that is to be confirmed, so please do hit that notification bell. And if Mr. B does go live, then you will know straight out of hand. Now, United Steph, then I need you to give us those 5 albums and give yourself a wee plug.
Okay, 5 albums. I'm gonna have to think of some of these now, Rebel. You kept me on my toes too much with these questions. Now, like, um, okay, let me think. I'll go Nirvana, Nevermind. I'll go for Appetite Destruction. Back in Black, classic one. Um, there's three, and I need to think of two more now. This is slightly concerning. Um, I don't know, man. What will I even go for? We'll go for One by Metallica, maybe. That can be another pretty acceptable one there. I can see the head nods from the side eye there, so I'll take that. I'll take that there for the minute.
Excellent. And do you want to give yourself a plug as well while you're at it?
Yeah, of course. As you guys can see, it's United Philosophy on YouTube, or it's United Stefan on Twitter. Much more active on the YouTube. Plenty of videos coming up across the weekend. Got a video coming up tomorrow as well. Hopefully, taking a look at the big earners, what Radcliffe's likely to do with them. So, if you want to check that out, guys, it is the United Philosophy on here live most nights during the week, earlier start times as well. So you can catch both shows. Watch everyone as well. Thanks very much for the support, guys, and thanks for having me on again, Rebel.
No worries at all. And Big T was loving the vibe today and hopes for more shows of this nature in the future. You'll just have to stay tuned, Big T, because he's got an open invite. So whenever he feels like jumping on, we will definitely flap the gums. Now, one of my kind of guilty pleasures is, of course, the likes of the WWE, New Japan Wrestling, and whatnot. And yesterday there was a tribute done to one of the most famous tag teams on that kind of circuit, and that was the Briscoe brothers. And to
Mm.
quote them, we have been them boys, and this has been the United Agenda.